Before we were discharged from the hospital, the nurse took my twins for one last checkup. However, when she came back, my heart stopped for a moment. Instead of bringing back a boy and a girl, as I had given birth to, she returned with 2 baby girls. Ross and I had been trying to start a family for a long time. Our excitement was boundless when we learned we were expecting twins, a boy and a girl. But confusion set in right after their first checkup, when Savannah, our nurse, brought us 2 girls instead. My heart dropped. "Where has my son gone? What exactly did you do to him? And whose baby is this other girl?" I demanded, unable to hide my shock and fear. "They are your daughters, Mom," she replied, not looking away from the documents she held. "I double-checked the reports and I'm confident there is no error." "Have you lost your mind?" My voice was sharp with disbelief. "I have all the reports as proof that I was supposed to deliver a boy and a girl. I saw them myself after the delivery. There's no way they're both girls." Savannah looked scared when she glanced up from her reports. But Dr. Carter entered the room before I could question her further. "Would you please keep quiet, Mom? This is a hospital, and there are other patients," she said, trying to calm me down. "Quiet? Seriously?" I asked, outraged. "Your nurse brings me a random child, then tells me she's not wrong. Is that how your hospital administration operates? Do I have to contact the chief doctor and inform him of the situation?" Ross finally spoke up. "I agree with my wife, doctor. We don't want to create a scene," he said. "But your nurse is lying. We don't know why she's doing that, but if we don't get our son back, we'll have to call the police." "Please, sir, calm down," Dr. Carter said, reassuringly. "I'm sure there's just some misunderstanding. Savannah has been working here for several years. Maybe she brought the wrong documents. Savannah, may I have a look at the papers?" But Savannah hesitated. "There's no need, Ma. I mean, I checked it, and they're fine." Dr. Carter shook her head and took the papers in her hands, deciding to check the reports herself. After a moment, she admitted there was a mistake. "Please give me a minute, ma'am," she said, licking her lips. "I assume Savannah brought the incorrect paperwork. There was another patient named Mrs. Matthews. Her first name is Lucy, too. Savannah must have gotten confused." "I'm glad you noticed your mistake," I said coldly. "I would recommend that you hire responsible people as staff next time." Dr. Carter apologized again and asked Savannah to follow her to correct the mistake. The nurse left with tears in her eyes. Something in my gut told me that the doctor's explanation was not the whole story, so I decided to follow them quietly. I saw them enter Dr. Carter's office. I heard crying, likely from the nurse. The door was slightly open, so I sat outside and listened. I didn't have a choice. I overheard Savannah saying between sniffles, "The other newborn girl is my sister's. Her husband left her when he found out she was pregnant, and she didn't survive the delivery. I could have adopted her, but my husband wouldn't agree." "What were you thinking, Savannah?" Dr. Carter asked sternly. "Mrs. Matthews delivered twins, a boy and a girl at 10:30 a.m. today. Even the report said that. Why are you lying to them? Be honest." "Why not place her for adoption?" Dr. Carter suggested. "She'd be well cared for." "It was my sister's dying wish for her daughter to be raised in a loving family," the nurse continued. "Seeing Mrs. Matthews and her husband together this morning, I thought they'd be perfect. So I swapped their son with my niece, intending to place him for adoption instead." "That's a crime, Savannah," Dr. Carter responded firmly. "We can't allow this. Bring Mrs. Matthews' son back immediately. And keep this matter confidential. Let's see what I can do to help." Hearing this, my heart sank, but surprisingly I wasn't angry. I felt so much empathy. A little baby girl was now alone in the world and would go into the system before possibly getting adopted. Although her methods were awful, Savannah hadn't intended harm. She was desperate to fulfill her sister's wish. I couldn't help but feel for the child as I returned to my room. Shortly after, Dr. Carter brought my newborn son back, apologizing for the mix-up. Knowing the full story, I decided against filing a complaint. Yet, that night, the image of the innocent child haunted me. "I can't stop thinking about her, Ross," I confessed the next morning. "I dreamt she was living with us, happy and at peace. It might sound crazy, but I can't shake this feeling." "It's the shock from yesterday," Ross tried to reassure me. "The hormones, too. You just gave birth. Why don't we call your mom to help us?" "No," I insisted. "I can't bear the thought of leaving her alone in this world. I want to adopt her." "But we already have 2 children," Ross protested. "Adding another is a lot. We need to think this through." "I've thought about it all night, and my mind is made up. Please, can we go to the hospital today and start the adoption process?" I pleaded. Ross was hesitant but agreed to support me. His reluctance faded the moment he held her. Her innocent gaze melted his heart. "We're thrilled to adopt her," I told the doctor. "We've longed for children, and now that she's come into our lives, we can't turn her away. Please let us know when we can bring her home." It took some time, but adopting her felt right, especially after we decided to name her Amelia. When we finally brought her home, our family felt complete, and we started raising all our kids as triplets. Savannah was grateful for our decision and became a close friend, often visiting to spend time with Amelia and the twins, Sia and Mark. As we settled into our new life with Amelia, the echoes of that chaotic day at the hospital began to fade, replaced by the soft, joyful sounds of our 3 children playing together. Each day felt like a gift, and I cherished the moments spent watching Sia and Mark, our biological twins, dote on their new sister. Amelia's infectious laughter quickly became the heartbeat of our home, and I often marveled at how serendipitously our family had grown. However, the transition wasn't without its challenges. In the early weeks, I found myself grappling with feelings of guilt. What if I hadn't pursued the adoption? What if Amelia had been raised in a system that didn't nurture her? These thoughts weighed heavily on me, and I often confided in Ross during our quiet moments together. "Do you ever wonder what her life would have been like if we hadn't adopted her?" I asked one night as we watched the twins drift off to sleep. Ross sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Sometimes, but I believe she was meant to be with us. Look at how happy she is. Look at how happy we are." His words soothed my restless heart, but the guilt remained. I began to make a habit of visiting Savannah, often inviting her over to see the kids. She was thrilled to be part of their lives, and seeing the bond grow between her and Amelia brought me comfort. Each visit was filled with laughter and stories, a testament to the shared love we all felt for the little girl who had once been lost in a tangle of confusion. As the months passed, we embraced our roles as a family of 5. Birthdays came and went, with Sia, Mark, and Amelia forming an inseparable trio. Their giggles echoed through the house, and the air was always filled with their creative adventures, whether it was building blanket forts or staging elaborate tea parties. Yet, as much as I enjoyed these moments, a part of me felt a shadow lurking in the background, the lingering question of Amelia's biological roots. One afternoon, while the kids played in the yard, I found myself scrolling through social media. A news article caught my eye about a family searching for their missing newborn, a girl who had vanished shortly after birth. The resemblance to Amelia was uncanny. My heart raced as I read through the details, and I felt an insatiable urge to investigate. "Ross," I said later that evening, my voice trembling, "what if Amelia isn't just an orphan? What if she has a family out there?" Ross paused, absorbing my words. "Lucy, we can't dive into this blindly. If there's a biological family, we need to consider how they might feel about Amelia being with us." "But she deserves to know where she came from," I insisted. "What if she has siblings? What if her story isn't finished yet?" Reluctantly, Ross agreed to support me as I sought the truth. We contacted the authorities and arranged a meeting with the family featured in the article. As we prepared ourselves for what could be an emotional reunion, I found myself filled with both hope and fear. What if they wanted her back? What if they rejected her, leaving her torn between 2 worlds? The day of the meeting arrived. The moment I stepped into the small conference room and locked eyes with the family, a couple who looked remarkably like Amelia, I felt the weight of our choices pressing down on me. Their faces were etched with sorrow, a reminder of the life they had lost. The father, tears brimming in his eyes, spoke first. "We thought we'd lost our baby forever," he said, his voice cracking. "When we heard about the mix-up, we hoped she would be found." My heart ached for them, for their pain, and for Amelia's future, which now hung in the balance. I explained how we had adopted her, how she had become an irreplaceable part of our family, and how deeply we loved her. They listened, their expressions a mixture of hope and despair. In that moment, I realized that love could manifest in many forms. Yes, they had a biological claim to her, but I had watched Amelia thrive in our care. She belonged with us, and I would fight for her happiness. After hours of heartfelt conversation, we reached an understanding. The family wanted to be part of Amelia's life, but they didn't want to take her away from us. They agreed to have regular visits, to build a bridge between their past and her present. As I drove home, the weight on my shoulders lifted. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, there would be questions and adjustments. But Amelia would know her story, her roots, and her place within our family. That night, as I tucked Amelia into bed, I whispered a promise to her. "You are loved, and you will always have a home with us." She smiled in her sleep, and I felt a deep sense of peace. In the months that followed, our family grew even stronger. Sia and Mark embraced their new cousins, and the bonds between our families deepened. We had woven a new tapestry of love, filled with threads of connection and understanding. And through it all, Amelia remained the light guiding us forward. A beautiful reminder of how love can transform even the most chaotic of beginnings into a heartwarming story of belonging.